Molly, and I come from the Cassia, which is the Ritzegard House, the Gitumt'en clan, the Bear Wolf clan. We are one of 5 clans that make up the Wickham governance structure. And I want to give you a bit of an update on what's been going on here on the front lines and what has led us to this point in this time. We have 38 distinct coast territories across 22,000 square kilometers of territory that runs from so-called Burns Lake in northwestern BC to past Wickham, which was formerly Morristown Band and Reserve. And we have 38 distinct coast territories that belong to the Wickham, and they're all throughout the territory. And the Denise and the Takaise, the male and female chiefs, they hold the full jurisdiction and responsibility as the speakers of our house groups to make decisions on those territories and to be responsible that those territories are allowed to generate, that those territories are not impacted by industry in a really harmful way, that they're not impacted by other people, by outsiders, or by even other clans. And this has been our system for thousands of years that has created the ability for our people to be able to thrive in the territories and be responsible and have a good relationship with the lands and the waters and the animals and everything that's in our intact. And so the Gitumt'en, as you probably know, is a house group that has been controlling access to their territory for years now. They are upholding the Gitumt'en law. Our Gitumt'en law is called Gitumt'en, and that basically lays out the guidelines and the responsibilities for each of the houses to protect their territories, and it tells us how to live our lives in a way that we're in good relations with each other, our other clans within the nation, externally, outside of the nation, and with the territory, with everything that's in the territory. And so they've been doing this for years and living it and controlling access in a way that is consistent with our Gitumt'en. For the last several years, we've been under the threat of pipelines. There are many, many pipelines that have wanted to come through the territories starting from years back. In total, probably about 12 or 13 that have been proposed through this exact route. And all of the pipelines that want to come through the territories or have wanted to come through over the years have to pass through Gitumt'en territory in order to get to the coast to export fracked gas. And Gitumt'en have been holding that line. They have a space in their territory that they control full access to that territory. It's a sovereign territory, and we're a sovereign nation, and they have full rights and responsibilities to control access to their territory because we've always done that. It wasn't until the Indian Act came along and the government, the federal government, and then the province who undermined our system, who wanted to put Indian Act bans in place of our hereditary, in place of our clan governance structures, and they attempted to destroy everything. They attempted to destroy our territories. They had to undermine the leadership in order to get control and power, which is why they enacted the reserve system and why they created Indian Act bans to have false power and authorities over the territory. We know that that's not true. We know that our Gitumt'en are what governs us, is what governs the territory. And so in December, when Coastal GasLink got an injunction against Gitumt'en in order for them to open up the gates and so that they could not restrict access or control access to their own territory, to their sovereign territory, Gitumt'en stepped up and decided that we have to do the same, and we have to support what's been going on Gitumt'en territory, because over the years the chiefs and the clans have gotten together and have had meetings and have gotten tons of information about what the threats are from these pipelines and from a pipeline corridor like this, and have researched fracked gas and the effects that it had on other nations, the socioeconomic effects, the boom and bust economies in our territories, and the effects of man camps in our territories. And all of the clans have unanimously, over and over, went to our feast hall, to our batlats, where our decisions as house groups and as clans are ratified. They're validated in the batlats for everybody to see, for everybody to witness. And over again, we've stood up, different clans, and most recently Gitumt'en, have stood up in the batlats and said, we cannot allow this. We're not going to allow this pipeline company or any pipeline company to enter through our territories. And most recently, Gitumt'en did that because of the threat to our territory, but also the threat to the Gitumt'en and the healing lodge that's there, and the people, or the Chilliwack people that are there to do healing and to engage in their cultural practices, which is what makes us healthy and what makes us alive, and how we live our laws out on the land. And so that happened, and every single clan within the nation came and they stood up and they supported that decision. And that has happened numerous times in our feast hall. That's our governance system. And despite the Indian Act, bans and the false authority that they hold and that they try to have jurisdiction over the territories, our system is still here. And we know what our laws are, and we're going to follow them. So Gitumt'en erected the checkpoint. And on January the 7th, the RCMP raided that checkpoint and invaded Gitumt'en territory. Although they were trespassing, they were breaking Wet'suwet'en law, they had extended the injunction to include Gitumt'en territory without ever notifying Gitumt'en people or the Gitumt'en clan, without trying to get free prior informed consent from the Gitumt'en. And they came in with militarized police, as you've seen probably in the media and images of that day. They came with violent force against unarmed, peaceful people, sovereign people that have full rights and responsibilities to control access to our territories. And we have a responsibility to uphold our laws. And so they broke those laws that day. They came in and they arrested 14 people, including myself, removed me and others from the territory to a different territory, and then moved in the RCMP. So that day was a pretty horrific day that the whole world watched. That's a day that we will never forget. We will never forget that, and that day was a truth-telling of what happened and what kind of relationship the government and the RCMP have with Indigenous peoples. And so CGL moved in, they took down the checkpoint, they occupied 44.5 kilometer, which is Cassia House territory. And they occupied that space for several weeks. The RCMP sat around our sacred fire, they burned our wood, they watched as Gitumt'en territory and Gitumt'en infrastructure and camps were destroyed by CGL. Since then, we've rebuilt our camp. We've rebuilt it for a number of reasons. As soon as the RCMP vacated, they had planned to bring a Coastal GasLink camp and work site into that area. We have people that live out on the territory, and it would have prevented Wet'suwet'en people from accessing their homes. To have a CGL work site at that exact location. It's a place where our people have gathered for years, a place where our people have come to harvest lamprey eels out of the river where the bridge was, where the checkpoint was. So this is a sacred site for ours. There are many, many culturally modified trees and heritage sites, and we need to be in that space. And so we took it back. We took it back because we will never be erased from our territory. We will never go away. They can tear us down as many times as they want, and we will always be there. We will always come back, and we've been doing that for years. You know, throughout our history, the government and industry have burned down our trucking cabins. They've burned people out of their homes. And we rebuild, and we come back because we have nowhere else to go. And we refuse to be erased from our own territories. So we rebuilt 44, we're there now, we're having cultural activities out there, the community members are out there. And currently, there were some archaeological artifacts that were found on Gitumt'en. Of course there are archaeological artifacts found at Gitumt'en. We know that these are our sacred sites. We know that we have these special areas where our people gathered. And so the archaeologists for the province came in and they stole the items, the artifacts, with the RCMP escorts, and they took them away. There's been a lack of adequate archaeological assessment in those areas, in the Man Camp Area 9A that they're proposing for Gitumt'en territory. They took that artifact, and we haven't heard anything since. Gitumt'en has been requesting to have a meeting with them, and there hasn't been any communication. It's in violation of Section 13.2 of the Heritage Conservation Act, and that's administered by the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resources, Glenroe, and it supersedes any other conflicting act. And the RCMP are supposed to be enforcing this act, that when artifacts are found on territories, there has to be a proper assessment completed. There have to be Gitumt'en people involved in that assessment, and they're on the territory to ensure that artifacts and human remains and burial sites are properly protected. And that was never done, and that wasn't done for Site 9A, for the man camp that they're trying to put into our territories, and it wasn't done for any of the other territory that they're currently bulldozing and destroying and putting roads into. Other clan territories that have never been touched, that have no access, is what they're doing. And so they put a temporary stop work on the one site for 9A, and they're continuing on as if nothing ever happened, with no proper archaeological assessment, violating the permits that they currently have with the province. And the RCMP are not only complicit, but they're active in that. They're out there every single day escorting CGL workers around the territory and harassing Wet'suwet'en people, threatening to arrest Wet'suwet'en people every single day. And so this is something that's going on currently. There has been no word from the archaeological branch, or the province, or Glenroe, or the MLA, Deb Donaldson, who's responsible for that. We haven't heard anything from them. Gitumt'en is requesting meetings with no communications. And so yesterday, in Gitumt'en territory, there were more artifacts found by a logging company that's doing logging in Gitumt'en territory. And immediately there was stop work on the whole project, that nobody's going in there, and a proper archaeological assessment has to be done. We know that our people have been there for thousands of years. We know there's artifacts, we know there's cultural heritage sites everywhere, and yet CGL and the RCMP, just for this pipeline, are ignoring all of their own laws and trespassing on Wet'suwet'en territory. We're back at 44 kilometer, and the RCMP are trying to villainize our people there, are trying to undermine the solidarity and the work that we're doing with the public, and the work that we're doing for the chiefs and the clans. They're trying to divide and conquer. They are pulling out every trick in the book, because they are so threatened by the fact that we are there, that we continue to practice our culture and our laws, and that we are not going anywhere, ever. So I appreciate that you're listening. I'm glad that you're here tonight. I'm glad that you're here to support and to learn more. and to support our efforts on the ground, because we need to be out on our territories. We need to be building on our territories. 44 is a start. Gitumt'en Camp Healing Lodge, that's a start. That's something that's never going away. That's going to heal our people and help our people to be on the land permanently, because it has been too long and we've been displaced and removed from our territories by the RCMP, by the province, and by the federal government. And it has to stop. And it's stopping now. This is the start of something very big. This is the start of something very powerful. And it's powerful because it's our way of doing it. It's our Gitumt'en, it's our clan governance system, and we know that we will win this way. We know that we will win by doing exactly what we've done for thousands of years, and the only thing that weakens us is the colonizer's way. The only thing that weakens us is to be displaced from our land and to not be connected to our culture. So that's what we're doing at 44. We're building out on the territory. We're just getting started, and we're so glad and appreciative of everybody who's supporting us. All the work that's been done to create this event, to host and organize this event, for everybody who's attended, Snake area. We're so grateful, and thank you for listening and carrying on and following along with what's going on here in Gitumt'en Camp. Outside.